afternoon. You're watching AB Live, a brand new news-based chat show in which we will be discussing one topic every week with two experts from the field. On today's episode, we will be discussing the real estate market here in the UAE, and with us in the sets, we have Samir Abdin, who is the General Manager of Dubizzle Property, and the CEO of Offplan Properties, Firas Al-Masadi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
And a very happy new year to you.
Thank you.
I really hope your year goes well, but I'm really interested to know what the year looks like for the real estate market. Samir, let's start with you.
So it's no secret that the market has faced some challenges over the past sort of couple of years. On the other hand, I think for this year, the key prediction is going to be stabilization. I think we're going to see the market stabilize. The reason I believe that is because as prices come down, more opportunities come up, and we're seeing people who previously would not come into the market now considering buying and seeing opportunities come up for them, both from an investment point of view and an end user point of view.
Right, Firas, you've had a fairly good year, I would say, and considering you're in the real estate investment portfolio, what would you say is your secret? And when the real estate market wasn't really doing well in the last couple of years, you've still managed to keep up.
I think the biggest debate here is supply and demand, which holds some people back and motivates some people to actually go on and identify opportunities. I think the supply and demand debate has been the case. It's not something new. It's been the case for years in Dubai. And, everyone wants to buy when prices are low. And for prices to become at a lower level, there has to be some triggers. In today's market, the trigger is the supply and demand. Mm-hmm. And people should not let it hold them back from identifying opportunities. And for us, honestly, in the past, I would say 2 years. For example, this year, 2018, we did over 1.4 billion worth of transactions.
Okay.
In Dubai. At my personal capacity, I think I did around 262 transactions registered in Dubai Land Department.
You fairly contributed then.
Yeah, and as a company, around 500 transactions.
Okay, brilliant.
And it's only because we did not allow whatever triggered the slowdown, whatever triggered the price softening in Dubai, to actually blind us out from identifying opportunities. Like Samir just said, when prices become more affordable, when the market becomes more challenging, you have prime units coming to the market that you don't see when the market's booming. I mean, 2014, 13, if you go now on YouTube, you can actually get videos on people queuing to acquire properties.
Yeah.
And of course, in that case, you would not get anything prime.
Right.
And I think today there are certain opportunities that is historical in Dubai today.
But on those lines as well, you're obviously saying that the prices have gone down, but we've also seen a lot of cost cutting happening, a lot of people leaving the country, a lot of repatriation happening as well in the country. So didn't that affect the real estate market? Because, well, it is directly related to the number of people present in the country, isn't it?
Look, of course, there is a challenge of supply and demand, which means the number of properties is greater than the number of people. It means the supply is greater than the demand. So that's something no one can deny. But that's why there's an opportunity. If it was the other way around, if the supply was lesser than the demand, you would see prices off the roof.
Right.
I mean, prices will not come down unless there is a trigger for it. Mm-hmm. The trigger could be, a political situation or supply and demand, or could be a number of scenarios.
Right.
In today's market, I think mainly it's the supply and demand.
This sort of brings me to the next question, and Samir, I'd like to bring you in here. One word that is really thrown around in the UAE is oversupply when it comes to retail spaces, when it comes to malls, and even now property. So Firas was telling me earlier about 45,000 units being handed over. It was announced earlier, but now it's below that. But in terms of the oversupply that we've seen, do you think that is also the reason why the prices have gone down?
Well, I think like Firas said, there are triggers for us. Price softening doesn't happen on its own. Mm-hmm. And clearly, we're in one of those, and economies are cyclical.
Yeah.
Right? They have booms and they have slowdowns and things, and part of this, I think, is just a natural economic cycle that is happening as Dubai matures, as an economy, as a society as well. And one of the shifts that's happening in the real estate market, which is quite interesting, is that if you go back even as recently as 5 years ago, or maybe even more, it was primarily an investor-driven market from a sales point of view.
Yeah.
Right. Now we're seeing more and more the shift into end users. Right. So people buying to live, families, settling in, like myself. I bought, not too long ago, who are planning to make Dubai, a long-term home. And I think, the opportunities that are now in the market allow for that.
Actually,
And I
it's
think
very
that's just a sign of maturity.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, but just on those lines, I'm sorry for interrupting you there, but then according to a recent report I studied, very similar to what you said, right now 6 in 10 people, residents of the UAE, want to invest in a property. But for us, how many of those people would want to invest in the UAE?
What? Sorry, I didn't get.
In terms of investment opportunities that the UAE has to offer to the people, according to again a study, I don't value the credibility of it, but roughly 6 in 10 people, UAE residents, want to invest. They have the whole investment mentality. But how many of those people would want to invest in this country?
Look, definitely transaction trend is still very healthy, and it's nowhere in line with with what some of the media or some of the I would say, non-experts are talking about. And that's why we exist as brokers. That's why we're actually expanding, and 2018 was a great year for us. On what Samer was saying, I totally agree with you. It's been always investment driven. I think the main difference between the supply and demand today and the supply and demand issue earlier, I would say 6-7 years back, the fact that earlier it was mainly off-plan projects, but today the supply is ready projects.
Right.
And here where the real challenge is, because previously to observe the supply, you just needed foreign investment, people to sign on contracts and to transfer funds. Today you actually need people to occupy these properties.
Right, agreed. Just on those lines again, what I would get to is, although rules have changed, the market has changed, but also there are some positives coming from the government in terms of the new laws that have been released, for example, the 10-year visa law, the 5-year retirement visas, etc. So how do you think these new laws are going to impact the economy and the real estate market? And when do we actually see it impacting?
I think the real impact should materialize throughout 2019 and moving forward, whether it's the 5 and 10 years visa or the ownership of foreign companies in Dubai, or I think what I really walk away with on the regulations and rules that we witnessed in 2018, the fact that the government will not stop until they bring it back. And many people, they say the mega developers in Dubai, the semi-government developers keep supplying properties and projects to the market. But that makes them, have a skin in the game, and whoever stands behind these mega developers is the authority that actually brings rules and regulations, and I don't see them stopping until they bring back the market to its strength.
Right.
So I see it in a very positive context.
Right. How about you, Samer? What do you feel about the rules and regulations again? Because, in terms of what you do, in terms of the researches that you conduct, have you seen like a boom in the researches or the searches happening on the basis of these new laws coming in?
So directly attributing to the new laws is kind of tricky, but because they're so new, right? They're so new. They've only very recently been implemented. And so, but I think as Faraz said, I think we'll really start to see it in 2019, 2020. And again, it's just another sign that Dubai is maturing, longer term, like the ability to reside here long term, the ability that, you get these visas with property, the fact that you can retire here, or it makes it a lot easier for you to retire here. So these are all signs of a maturing market and a maturing society. And I think, the government's done the right thing there.
Right, so it does look like the government is not just trying to retain more people here, but also helping the real estate sector, because according to the 5-year retirement visa policy, one of the conditions that people really require is that if they own a property that's 2 million or more.
Yeah.
Correct. So I think the government is also trying to do that. But on those lines, what I would like to know, and what I'm sure our viewers would also like to know, are the job opportunities posed by these sectors. So in Dubai, the 3 sectors that provide for 38% of the jobs right now are construction, manufacturing, and real estate. How does the job market look like, in your opinion?
I mean, look, the real estate market at the moment, you just look around, the developers are still very active. They're clearly hiring. I can't speak specifically to their sort of hiring strategies, etc. But what I can say is clearly they are very active. And as Faraz said, we're all in this market to try and make it work, the government included. So, hopefully 2019 will stabilize. And as we run into, Expo 2020, we'll see a pickup. And we'll take it from there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Expo 2020. Everyone is talking about Expo 2020 and how the businesses are majorly going to be affected by Expo 2020. But Firaz, according to you, as an expert again, I would like to ask you, do you think this is the right time to buy property? Because short-term leases are actually going to be seen more often, just given the nature of Expo 2020.
I think once you identify the right opportunity, whether the market's going up or it's going down, the right time is when you do your due diligence and you find the right opportunity. That's why, if you ask me now, I'll tell you it's the right time if you find the right opportunity. If you asked me 2 years back, I would still say the same statement. But buying based on, just seeing a brochure, or based on, me seeing someone on the social media, or a singer or a celebrity saying this is the right project, and most people who are acquiring houses, they probably know what they need more than the celebrity who's saying buy this project. So buying and investing without doing due diligence or homework will always end up, it won't end up very successful.
It doesn't look like you're a fan of marketing then,
Yeah.
from what you're saying. But again, just on those lines, during the Expo, rentals are expected to fall because, again, more properties might be bought, etc. So basically, if they buy property, these properties are going to allow the buyers to even stay or just rent it out to people on a short-term basis. Don't you think that is an advantage?
I think one of the greatest initiatives came from DTCM in Dubai. The fact that they regulated the short-term rental market, which is not regulated even in very mature markets such as London market, for example. So here everything is regulated by the government. So landlords, the government created great transparency around the short-term business, because short-term companies, they have to log in every single guest, and the landlords are able to generate reports from DTCM on the occupancy and on the rates. I think this trend will only grow. And look, this is one of the comebacks and one of the reactions to the market, because when you say there is more properties and probably less tenants, or we don't see the queue of tenants we used to see before, it's important for us to tap into a new stream of tenancy contract, a new stream of tenancy, such as capitalizing on the global position of Dubai being a touristic destination.
Right, interesting. But since you're talking about schemes, I'd just like to bring the rent-to-own scheme. It's not a new scheme. It was done years back. Do you see that coming back again to the market? And do you think it is going to benefit?
It will indeed benefit, but we need regulations around it. It's not yet regulated well by. It's not yet regulated at all, I think, by the Dubai Land Department. So until the Dubai Land Department brings regulations around this trend, I won't see any drastic growth.
Right. I'm sorry. Just for our viewers, can I just ask you to explain it also, just briefly, so our viewers get a better understanding of what the rent-to-own scheme is?
So basically, your rent will go towards your purchase price of a certain property.
Okay.
But like I said, at the moment, even though some developers or landlords are doing it, but they're doing it based on a side contract. And for me, this is something I would never get into or advise anyone to get into, unless there is, there's firm rules to govern the relationship between the buyer and the seller. I won't get into it. But the principle is I think it's very simple. You pay rent, and your rent will go towards your purchase price.
All right, very interesting. But thanks for sharing that with us. But Samir, coming back to you about the types of properties, which I really am interested in, I'm sure people are interested in as well. What are the main types of properties that are essentially in demand right now? Are they villas? Are they apartments? Are they duplex? What is it?
So, I mean, there's demand across all. Obviously, the things that are most in demand is driven by the kind of demographic that is in Dubai, and typically, it's a young-ish place with relatively small family sizes, etc. So, and you see that in terms of the demand. So you've got, the one beds, apartments are generally the things that drive sort of traffic and searches. Having said that, like I said before, the way that the market is going presents opportunities.
Right.
The way that Dubai is maturing means that more people are settling, which means, again, those young families are starting to grow, they're starting to look for villas, and places like, Dubai Land, Arabian Ranches, etc. And you know, JVC, we've seen, you know, really big pickup there over the past year. There's been a lot of construction and work happening there, some interesting offers.
Right.
And you know, you've got some really great projects by the sea. The Mera projects are doing really well.
But are these places actually getting more affordable? The villas and the community living that people are actually looking for right now?
Well, they are. And the thing is that what people are looking for is that community feel, right? If you're an end user, your yield is not your most important thing necessarily. You want some, obviously, you want it to pay off, but you're also looking for community. You're also looking for facilities. You're also looking at how easy it is to get in and out in terms of going to work every day, schools. All of these things, you know, go into it. And as more and more end users are buying properties, more and more these considerations are taken into account, and I think developers are starting to realize that too.
Right, interesting. So we saw what the people are actually looking at, but now I would like to know what the target customers are for the major developer community essentially. Who are they essentially targeting? The demographics, the nationalities? Firaz, if you'd like to take that.
I think towards end 2018, two strong trends came to play, and I think it will continue throughout 2019. One is the initiatives by the Dubai Land Department to reach out to new markets, to new international markets. So I think they're on about probably 20 roadshows in different countries, all the way to the US. And of course, China was a main target too. The other thing is the long-term payment plan. And today, if you ask me where is the opportunity in 2019 and why it's time limited and it won't last forever, I think one of the really good opportunities investing in ready properties or semi-ready properties that offer long-term payment plans.
Okay.
Because this gives you I mean, people look at it as a payment plan, but if you want to look at it from a number standpoint, today if you buy a property, for example, in Blue Waters Island, and you spend 4 million dirhams on a large 3-bedroom apartment, you put down 20% and you take the key today. And normally you should get around 4 to 5% rent on the total purchase price. So the 4 or 5% forms 20% rental income, 20 to 25% rental income on your first year.
Right, yeah.
And what you see is what you get, and you're buying also in a destination where the master developer has carried interest in it. It's a strategic project for the government. So all I'm trying to say, I'm not trying to promote any project actually, but all I'm trying to say is that this opportunity won't last forever because mega developers are sitting on ready properties today. It's not like what we had before where the entire project is sold immediately off plan.
Okay.
And that's why it's time sensitive. It won't last forever. Developers are motivated today to give you long-term payment plans because also it's very costly for them to upkeep these properties, until it sells slowly.
Right.
The other thing, when you look at the destination where you have the retail component in it, also it's in the best interest of the master developer to make sure that they get these properties occupied. So the retail component also gets busy.
Okay.
And on the retail, honestly, I think people, if you look at this at the retail, I mean, you have malls that are completely deserted in the US.
Exactly.
So the e-commerce, so it's not only Dubai, it's not only the what's happening in Dubai locally. There are global trends that every single country is subject to, and Dubai is just part of this world. I mean, the fact that Brexit is still taking place in London. I mean, the uncertainty there is far more than the uncertainty here in Dubai.
Exactly. I'm just going to get to the global implications in a bit. But before that, I've sort of got a mixed feeling from you about off-plan properties from both of you guys. I'm not really sure. So will you all tell me, is it a yay or nay for each of you all?
A yay or a nay? Look, I think there are some really exciting opportunities there. Like Firas said, there's motivation to sell. There are some really interesting deals out there, especially those, I'm going to repeat what you said, essentially those longer payment plans. Look, it's worth looking into. Everyone's opportunity is obviously different. They define it differently, so you have to do your due diligence and you go into it. But, I think for us is spot on in that respect. There are some really interesting deals. They won't last forever. Good deals do not last forever.
Yeah.
And at some point, this market's going to pick up. The supply-demand equation is going to change. And the situation we're in now will not last forever. So
right.
and what once it's gone, it's gone. And as one of the major brokers told me the other day, you have to be careful not to do 2009 again, right? And kick yourself 3-4 years later, thinking, Yeah, it looked bad at the time, but actually, had I had the foresight to buy then we would have done really well out of it, and it would have been a sound investment. So
right, but do you think people have actually lost confidence though after the second slowdown that we saw? Are people not confident enough to buy it because of the situations? And also, have the government actively started releasing funds not for the mega projects but for the smaller projects?
So I think the proof point there is in the number of transactions. So fair enough, the prices have come down. But I think, as Faraz said, in terms of the actual number of transactions, those numbers are quite healthy. So what's clearly happening is that as prices come down, people are seeing things becoming more attractive, and they're coming in. And so, I think people are spotting investment opportunities. Is my point.
Right. And what do you feel about this? Do you think the confidence has been reinstilled, or is it still going to take more time?
Well, I think for me personally, at my personal capacity, seeing is believing, and what we're seeing that the government never stopped putting the efforts. It's not going to happen overnight, but they never stopped putting the efforts, towards bouncing the market back to its best shape. And I think it's a great opportunity. If the market was just flat, there isn't much opportunities. Even for us as active player in this market, it's a lot more challenging for us to find opportunities in good market. But I think all my clientele, my anchor investors, are basically people who have invested with us during 2010 and 11. They doubled, tripled, what they've put in. So definitely today's market is an opportunity. But you have to do your due diligence. You have to understand what you're getting into. You have to get, of course, the right advice. And I mean, even in the past 7 months, the market was going down. We still actually acquired in one of Dubai's projects, and we've made great return on equity.
Okay, interesting. So we've actually pretty much touched like different segments and different sectors involved, except one, which is the lenders, which is the banks. So are we also going to see more coming from that aspect? Because changes in the US monetary policy has actually shown that there has been an increase by 25 points in interest rates, and since obviously the dirham is directly affected the US dollar, do we also see that here in the UAE?
Look, I'm not an economist, but all I can say for sure, we are feeling some sort of an impact, even if it's at the level of just having a discussion about this with clients. But I think the picture today is much bigger than this. If you look at the international market, most of the international markets have peaked out. So if you look at, I think there's a recent report by UBS, quoting Toronto, Hong Kong, and other mature markets as a bubble. So it reached its peak. Or you have markets full of uncertainty, like what's happening in London today. So all of this, position Dubai and give Dubai, I think, a very competitive edge over other markets.
Yeah.
And the fact that Dubai is linked to the dollar, I think it's still, we're seeing great interest, for example, from Chinese investors now, because they're getting out of Canada. They see London as a market full of uncertainty, and they're coming to Dubai because Dubai is linked to the dollar. So yes, this is one of the aspects, but there are much bigger motives that weigh out, the interest rate aspect.
Agreed. We've also seen the return of Russian tourists back in the UAE right now, and Chinese investors also coming back. So I would agree with that point completely. But Samir, just staying on the lending capacity, recently Sheikh Nahyan, he actually said that the caps are going to be removed, and there are going to be amendments made to the laws that were introduced back in 1980. So how exactly, in terms of lending capacity, of course, so there's not going to be any cap anymore. How is that going to be affecting the real estate market?
Let's see. These things, obviously the amount of liquidity there is, financial liquidity there is in the market does influence what happens there, especially to end users and things like that. But ultimately it's the bank's decision, how they gain that exposure to the real estate market. They could do it directly, they could do it via loans, they could do it via mortgages. So, and how they will do it, I honestly don't know. But I hope it's clearly yet another step in what Faraz was saying, which was that the government clearly, whether it's federal or local, clearly has an eye on this market and is clearly trying to maintain the financial and market health of Dubai and the UAE. So it's only a positive step. Exactly how it's going to impact, that's kind of between the regulators and the banks, and yeah.
So I guess we'll have to wait and watch then.
We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us on this very, very
Thank you.
insightful discussion. We've definitely learned a lot today. And also, if you guys have any questions, just post them in the comments below and we will try to take your questions, or Samir and Firaz can obviously answer them for us. But thank you again for joining us on AB Live. This was our first episode, so we're really privileged to have you guys here, and thank you for watching AB Live.
Thank you.